Welcome to Unpasteurized, Raw Perspectives from a Former Christian. Atheists who engage with Christians and Christians who engage with atheists seem to have one thing very much in common. Both groups are often frustrated to find that each seems to be talking past each other. The atheist is frustrated that the Christian seems not to have understood any points raised by the atheist. Meanwhile, the Christian is frustrated at the atheist's inability to comprehend the most obvious truths. It's almost like they're speaking two different languages.
Celia's up for parole.
Hey, little Jerry won his cockfight.
What? Who? I'm too tired.
If you grew up in church like me, I want you to take a quick stroll down memory lane with me. Turn your mind backwards in time to those glorious Sunday mornings when the dawn's light was streaming through those beautiful stained glass windows. The pastor was just wrapping up his sermon, and the congregation was excited because coming up next was the most important part of the service: the Q&A after the sermon. Every paying congregant's chance to confront the pastor head on and ask challenging questions in a room full of people, maybe even challenge the sermon directly. Don't you remember the Q&A where every dues-paying club member can challenge the views of the pastor? Yeah, me neither. But maybe a designated worship service just isn't the right time and place for a Q&A. So instead, maybe some of you remember your church's debate night, where different espoused views could be considered. Yeah, I don't remember that either. Or maybe your church had an alternative beliefs night, a judgment-free zone wherein you were free to discuss your less than mainstream beliefs or private questions with the group. I strongly doubt it. These kinds of activities all would be great at fostering critical thinking, interpersonal debate skills, and general open-mindedness. These skills are extremely helpful to every individual, but they are not helpful to a church. It is not in the best interests of any religious organization to teach critical thinking to their rank and file members. It is not in the best interests of any church to teach general open-mindedness. These qualities absolutely would help parishioners in their non-church lives, but it is not in the best interests of any church to help their parishioners. If churches were in the business of helping the parishioners, churches would be giving money to their parishioners rather than asking their parishioners for the money. To wit, none of the churches I ever attended had any other real-world developmental programs, not classes, not job placements, not interpersonal skills, not even non-Bible self-help programs based on other successful, helpful books. Like I said, churches are not in the business of helping their parishioners with their lives. In the church's view, your invisible magic best friend, Jesus, will give you all the help you need. So it isn't up to the church, it's up to you to trust your invisible magic best friend. If, like me, you eventually discover that your invisible best friend also seems to be perennially absent, this can create problems for you. If, like me, you eventually discover that your magic best friend isn't actually capable of real magic, you might find that you actually need the help of other humans to teach you things that the church won't teach you and Jesus won't do. Maybe because Jesus hates me personally, or maybe because the concept of an invisible, all-powerful best friend is not compatible with reality. Like, for example, if you need a job to feed your family, in direct contradiction of verses like Matthew 6:25 and Matthew 7:7. In certain jobs, you need critical thinking skills to survive and succeed. In life, you need critical thinking skills to survive and succeed. Our government provided me with a basic education in math, science, English, history, and physical fitness. But I do mean basic education.
Look, I just want to basically come to your school and do some book learning, okay? I've only got my grade 10, which I don't think is a big deal. Some people might.
I was not taught critical thinking skills in elementary school, middle school, or high school. Depending on the quality of your schools and the difficulty of your classes, maybe your schools taught you critical thinking, mine did not. I enlisted briefly in the United States military.
Well, you wouldn't last a day in the Army.
How long did you last?
Well, that's classified.
Critical thinking skills are not taught in U.S. Army basic training. Critical thinking is not an essential skill for an Army private whose only job is to follow orders. Next, I enrolled in a private Christian university. I did begin to learn critical thinking and logical arguments as a result of having to write endless research papers in the subjects of theology and philosophy. Defend Augustine. Refute Augustine. Defend Aquinas. Refute Aquinas. Use Aquinas to refute Augustine. Use Augustine to refute Aquinas. Use both to refute your classmate. On and on and on. But if I gave you the impression that my private Christian university's theology program made an effort to formally teach me critical thinking and debate skills, I gave you the wrong impression. They did not. And plenty of people in the theology program continue to believe whatever it is their local home pastor taught them, even if it directly contradicts the tenured professor of theology who's explaining how the Bible actually came to exist. After college, I became a detention officer in a local county jail. Basic detention officer training, BDOT, does not teach critical thinking and debate skills. These are not critical skills for a low-ranking sheriff's deputy whose job is to pass out toilet paper to inmates. But eventually, I would land my first corporate gig. In 2007, I joined the highly competitive industry of biotechnology at a research and development facility. This job was different than any other job or role I'd ever had before, and the thinking of the people around me was different from the thinking of any other people I'd ever met. They took my questions seriously. They even considered my ideas. And if it turned out that my ideas were good, and that I could do a good job of defending my ideas, they would even implement my suggestions. You see, the organizations in which I had been active, church, the military, a private university, and law enforcement, they do not operate on the merit of ideas. When you join one of these organizations, it literally doesn't matter how smart you are or how good your ideas are. Independent thinking will only slow you down. These organizations operate under purely authoritarian regimes. The man in charge, and statistically and historically speaking, it has been a man in charge, mostly because the Bible implies God has a penis, but also because the Bible explicitly devalues women and literally prohibits women from positions of authority. But that's a topic for a whole bunch of other videos. The way authoritarianism works is simple. Whoever's in charge, whatever they say is the fucking law. That person might be a Christian pastor, a U.S. Army officer, a tenured professor, or an elected county sheriff. You don't need critical thinking or debate skills when you're working for that kind of a person. In fact, critical thinking is detrimental to that kind of relationship. These are not people who need or want or welcome outside input. These organizations are not run on the merit of ideas. The people within are not valued for their intellect or their logic or their foresight. Intellect and logic and foresight are detrimental to authoritarian regimes because intellect, logic, and foresight tend to result in challenging the status quo. Why is the status quo bad? Because at every point in human history, humans knew less about the universe than we know today. Almost every tradition we have was built on lies, misinformation, and authoritarian-led groupthink and worse. You don't make progress by going backwards. You can't improve people's lives without challenging the status quo. And in places like church, you are not permitted to challenge the status quo. Whenever you encounter a devoted Christian and you are tempted to debate the merit of your ideas against the merit of their ideas, remember, church does not teach critical thinking and debate. The church does not teach its members how to challenge an idea. The church actively teaches that challenging authority is bad. The church actively teaches that challenging the status quo is bad. The church actively teaches that questioning authority is always bad. The church teaches this to its members from infancy, not on the basis of logical thought, but through emotional manipulation. Church is not a place where you're meant to wonder if the pastor or the book could have made any kind of error or mistake. Church is a place where you're meant to hear the music, be impressed by the architecture, take a few deep breaths, and feel good. Anyone who challenges what the church has to say is someone who's trying to take away your favorite music, coffee with your church friends, and your other good feelings. A mind that has been conditioned in this way is baffled that anyone would have anything critical or negative to say about any of the contributing factors that created that experience. Obviously, Allah is what created the feelings I felt. Obviously, Vishnu is what created the feelings I felt. Obviously, Jesus is what created the feelings I felt. And just as obviously, those people at the next religion over worshiping the wrong guy are liars and fakers. Church, as an organization, ought to be able to subsist solely on the miraculous and infinite creative power of their omnipotent, invisible friend. But that is not how church works in reality. In reality, church, as an organization, subsists on the cash contributions of its club members. If the club members ever question any part of the organization, those cash contributions will dry up.
Where is it? Where's the rest? The money, Skylar. Where is the rest? Skylar, where is the money?
Whenever my atheist friends are frustrated that Christians seem to be speaking a completely different language, I want you to remember, church does not teach debate. It is not in their financial interest for their members to have minds of their own. Until next time, stay excellent.